G'day from Brisbane, Australia. My name is Kathy Williams-Devries and I'm coming to you from Kangaroo Point Cliffs, a fine example of Brisbane tuff. Now, these cliffs are artificial. They're not carved by the river. In fact, they were first quarried by the convicts when Brisbane was a penal colony, and then later by free men. So here's a picture inset of what the quarry looked like, and you can see that the cliffs originally sloped gently down to the river. So, a brief history of this suburb of Brisbane, then we'll get into the geology. Firstly, why is it called Kangaroo Point? Now, it was originally settled by the Turrbal people, the Aborigines, and Kangaroo Point is located on a peninsula formed of harder rhyolitic rock, and because the Brisbane River couldn't go through it, it had to go around it. So I show you a picture of the Brisbane River and you can see the point in the graphic. So it was named Kangaroo Point after the kangaroos and wallabies that frequented the district in its bushland days. Then in 1823, the explorer John Oxley described Kangaroo Point, and as I quote, a jungle fringed with mangroves, with the higher land open forest covered with grass. And we still have mangroves at Kangaroo Point. I'll show them to you a bit later. I'm looking at them right now. Sort of breeding ground for fish and mozzies. So during convict settlement between 1825 and 1841, remember that Australia was first settled by the convicts and the Brits in 1788 after you Americans wouldn't take the British convicts anymore. So, between 1825 and 1841, Kangaroo Point was cleared and used for crop cultivation, probably up the top, before being opened up to free settlers. And the first house was built here by the surveyor James Warner in 1844. So the most significant development of the suburb was the building of the Story Bridge. It was named after the prominent public servant John Douglas Story in 1840. The bridge links Kangaroo Point with Fortitude Valley, which replaced an earlier ferry. So, these cliffs were created by convicts mining the volcanic rock, which they found to be an excellent building material. And the church at the top of the cliffs, St Mary's Anglican Church, Kangaroo Point, which I'll hike up and show you, is made of stone quarried from here. Captain Patrick Logan, who I mentioned in my last video, the much hated commandant of the Morton Bay penal settlement, first opened a quarry to supply stone to his building works as early as 1826. And the Old Windmill in Spring Hill, which I'll show you in the next video, which is the oldest convict-built structure surviving in Queensland, and the Commissariat store on Queen's Wharf, which I will also show you, they still stand today, which in a sidebar actually is a very significant feat, because Brisbane is famous for demolishing its old buildings. Anything older than 20 years old, and the Dean brothers come in and knock it down. So for those two buildings to still be standing from, the 1800s is an absolutely awesome feat. All right, and just a side story about the Old Windmill, and I have to add this. It was used for grinding grain, but there was a treadmill installed so the mill could still grind the grain if there was no wind. And that treadmill was used as a tool to punish the convicts. So from 1842, this quarry was rented to private stonemasons like John Petrie, who was later mayor of Brisbane, and he has a bight in the river named after him, and a suburb in the northern suburbs. And then in 1860, the quarry was taken over by the Brisbane Municipal Council, now the Brisbane City Council. So the stone was also used as sailing ballast for ships until the rector of St Mary's up above us stepped in and said that was a wasteful use of valuable stone, and convinced the Queensland colonial government at the time, because Federation didn't take place until 1901, so Queensland was sort of its own country, and that mentality still goes on today. In times of coronavirus, all the states, the borders are pretty much shut. So if you want to come in from New South Wales, the Mexicans below us, you got to have a permit unless you're a Queenslander. And Victorians are not welcome at all. Go away. Stay in Victoria. I mean, you're 2,000 k's away. Anyway, so stones from this quarry were used to line parts of the Brisbane River with walls. I might be able to show you some of that. For the Manly Boat Harbour, I think we'll have to go out there at some point. And for the new port of Brisbane. And the quarry eventually closed in 1976, the year of my birth. So I'm dating myself here. I'm not as old as some of you, obviously. Okay! That's enough history. Let's get to the geology. What do these cliffs represent? All right. This is called the Brisbane Tuff, and it represents a very turbulent time in Brisbane history, geologically. So my guidebook, the second edition of Rocks and Landscapes of Brisbane and Ipswich, notes that it would have been a pretty dangerous place for any early dinosaurs living near Brisbane at this time. Cool, there's a city cat. There's a couple of city cats going past. I'll have to swing around and show you those. They're our ferries that go up and down the river. So, at this time, there were several volcanoes active in southeast Queensland. So we're talking 220 million years to 230 million years ago. And these volcanoes were highly explosive and erupted gas-rich, sticky lava of rhyolite composition. So you didn't tend to get lava flows, rather lots of rock blasted out of the vents in huge clouds of gas and fragments. These clouds were a dense mass of semi-liquid pumice and dust at close to 1,000 degrees Celsius, and it was lubricated by hot gas. Now, you wanted to be a Formula One driver to outrun these, as they could reach speeds of over 200 kilometres an hour. could be tens of metres thick and travel over 100 kilometres. So when they came to rest, the material is still so hot that it compacts under its own weight into a very hard, tough rock called Welded Tuff, or ignimbrite. Ignimbrite being Latin for fiery shower. So if we're lucky, we might see some bits of flattened pumice and the odd petrified tree. So if I hike over the Story Bridge, there's an outcrop there where we may see some of that. Now, before I get into the specifics and early research into the Brisbane Tuff, and yes, I am going to actual geology papers published by the University of Queensland, why was all this volcanic activity happening at this time? So there was no subduction happening. There was no hotspot at this time. That was 20 to 30 million years ago. What was happening to the crust at this time that made Brisbane party central when it came to volcanic activity? So remember from my last video, the Enoggera granite, which forms my suburb, was formed at this time and has a similar chemical signature to this Brisbane Tuff. You had volcanoes out of Brookfield, another granite intrusion out at Samford, basalt flows. What was going on here? After a long period of subduction and compression of the crust relaxed and extended, and the thin crust enabled molten material to make its way to the surface. Now, I want to share with you some early research via a paper by Professor H.C. Richards and W.H. Bryan from the Geology Department of the University of Queensland, and this was published back in 1933. It is entitled The Problem of the Brisbane Tuff, and I have posted it on the Fans of Nick Zentner fan group page on Facebook. So, according to this paper, the earliest account of the Brisbane Tuff was by the explorer Leichhardt in 1855, when he visited Brisbane in 1844, and this is translated from the German. Forming the steep bank of the Brisbane River opposite the government gardens behind you, and between Petrie's Bight, there's that name Petrie again, and New Farm, that's a bit further over. New Farm actually is where the Brisbane Tuff was zircon dated for its date, and I'll tell you about that a little bit later. Opposite the government gardens and between Petrie's Bight and New Farm, there occurs a rock of pale violet colour which furnishes an excellent building stone. It encloses pieces of talc schist, but one notices feldspar crystals too, and these reveal the true nature of the rock. I consider it a domite, since it is broken through the talc schist and includes many fragments of that rock. One is inclined at first to regard it as a conglomerate. Now, the next bloke to come along was Wilson in 1856, and he described the formation as, I quote, a large dike of flesh-coloured porphyry containing crystals of quartz and feldspar and many fragments of the slate rock through which it has been erupted. So they thought it came from underground as a dike, porphyry. So these fragments show no indication of having been fused or altered. Wasn't he wrong? So this led, this is my sidebar, to the erroneous name of Brisbane porphyry. So A.C. Gregory came along in 1879 and also regarded the rock as an intrusive porphyry containing fragments of slate. Though he did point out, and I hope I can show you this, portions of silicified wood are embedded in the lower surface of the erupted mass. In 1887, a bloke called Rands disagreed and described the rock as a volcanic ashy sandstone. And I quote, "Taking into consideration the nature of the rock, its being full of angular pieces of other rocks, the absence of any change in the surrounding schists, and lastly its position in relation to the other formation, I've come to the conclusion that it is a volcanic ash and not a porphyry, and that it lies at or near the base of the Ipswich beds." So Rands also states that included fragments attain the size of pebbles or boulders towards the base, and that it has near its base pieces of silicified and also of carbonised wood. Okay, now I'm getting excited to see if I can spot some of this. It was a result of Rand's work that the pyroclastic origin of the rock was now generally accepted and adopted into usage and became known as the Brisbane Tuff. Though local engineers in 1933, when this paper was written, did still use the term porphyry, as did the people quarrying the stuff. Still, there was uncertainty in the minds of geologists as to the nature and origin of the rock, as evidenced by Walcombe in 1918 saying it was probably of volcanic origin, although there is no indication of its source resulting from the deposition of volcanic ash. In 1920, Dunstan, though he still hadn't pinpointed the source, was very definite as to the nature of the eruption when he said, "Volcanic outbursts at the beginning of the Triassic period formed a very thick deposit of dust or ash over the hills and valleys in the Brisbane district, and the timber growing on the shales and schists at that time was enveloped and destroyed by a great thickness of this dust. The deposits evidently were not laid down as mud, as the tops of the hills were as thickly covered as the bottoms of the valleys. While in addition," and here this is mentioned again, while in addition the presence of charcoal at the base of the cliffs, at the base of the tuffs, quite unchanged even after the lapse of such a length of time, gives evidence of the burning of some of the timber while its envelopment was taking place. Again in 1920, Ball saw a possible link between the Brisbane Tuff and the acid intrusions of the Indooroopilly area. So Richards in 1924 suggested it is not unlikely that the source of the activity was to the east or southeast of Brisbane in a region now founded below sea level. While in 1827 the authors of the paper that I'm reading to you thought it might be a place 12 miles east-southeast of Brisbane. So according to this 1933 paper, the most recent research on the Brisbane Tuff at the time was by a Mrs. C. Briggs in 1928, who concluded that the tuff was laid down on land surface, the continuity of which was broken by a series of small freshwater lakes. There is no direct indication of the centre of the eruption of this tuffaceous material within a reasonable distance of its outcrops. So Mrs. Briggs also suggested a genetic relationship between the Brisbane Tuff, the Indooroopilly intrusives and the Enoggera granite, Mount Coot-tha, which chemically and mineralogically have much in common. Well, you're probably looking at a 20 to 30 kilometre radius between them, so yeah. What's interesting was they thought the source was southeast, when the authors of the paper noticed that it lay in a north-northwest, south-southeast direction. So they noted at the time, while they were sure it was 200 to 300 feet thick, it was possibly 500 feet thick. They noted at Windsor, and I'll have to take you there, there was a very pronounced columnar structure to the rock. And they compared it to the columnar basalt of Orange Mountain in New Jersey. So you can even see volcanic mud balls or accretionary lapilli in the tuff at the northern and easterly limits of the tuff, like at Aspley, north of me. And if you're new to geology and you have no idea of what accretionary lapilli is, it's fossilised rain and hail, because these huge volcanic eruptions kind of create their own weather. And, if this ash comes into contact with rain and hail, it kind of forms around it. And, of course, the water and the ice melts, but you still have these little balls. You still have these little balls. Fossilised rain and hail. How about that? Okay. So, in 1927... the reason they thought the eruption was to the southeast was the presence of this accretionary lapilli, fossilised rain and hail, but that the research of the time from the Philippines didn't tend to support that. Now, Mrs. Briggs, again in 1929, thought that the uniformity of the material suggests that the source of origin was approximately at the same distance from all points in the outcrop. This, together with the fineness of the material and the absence of coarse volcanic ejectamenta, would suggest that the source was not very close to the present outcrop. So the authors of this paper from 1933 tested the hypothesis that the presence of the aforementioned columnar tuff at the Windsor Quarry, with evidence of high temperature and local disturbance of the underlying shales, may have indicated that the source of the eruption may have been there. So they drilled a bore, only to find that the tuff was only 43 feet below the quarry floor, so back to the old drawing board. They even wondered if the tuff originated from a series of fissures, because out at Indooroopilly again you had a swarm of rhyolitic intrusives, which they thought, and I quote, may represent the denuded remnants of the dikes which act as feeders. So that's where the magma's coming up from underground, sort of in a dike. All right, so that's 1933. I now refer to a 1998 paper by Roach, which describes the work of Higginson in 1946, whose misidentification of several outcrops as tuff led to an overestimate of the extent of the Brisbane tuff. In 1960, Bryan and Jones said that the tuff went all the way down to the Numinbah Valley, down the coast, but that tuff was found to be part of the Chillingham volcanics, a completely different story. So as of 1998, they still didn't have an age for the Brisbane tuff, and they noted that at the time the best bet lay in a zircon date. They've since dated it from New Farm, and it's 226 million years old. So in this paper, it estimates the tuff to cover a distance of 60 kilometres between Narangba in the north and Redland Bay in the south, with most of it concentrated in a 10-kilometre radius of Brisbane. Hence Brisbane tuff, huh? So this paper points out that earlier estimations of the thickness of it, 300 feet by Briggs in 1928, 700 feet by Bryan and Jones in 1960, and going into the metrics, 250 metres by Cranfield in the year of my birth, 1976, probably include rocks that aren't Brisbane tuff, such as conglomerates. So they did originally think that the Brisbane tuff was a conglomerate. Now, an estimation of the volume of the Brisbane tuff as being approximately 100 cubic kilometres by Smith in 1960. Well, that now includes rocks known to be the aforementioned Chillingham volcanics. Now I'm going to show you a graphic of the distribution of the Brisbane Tuff. It's pretty localised and concentrated. You can see a bit of it up at Narangba and then around Redland Bay. So this is a really interesting paper that I've posted on the Nick Zentner fan group page on Facebook, and it's a fascinating read. I now refer to my guidebook, Rocks and Landscapes of Brisbane and Ipswich, second edition, put out by the Geological Society of Australia, Queensland Division in 2012. So according to Neville Stevens, Benjamin Cohen and Friedrich von Nalinsky, cool name dude, the rock unit known as the Brisbane Tuff is a result of one or at most a few explosive eruptions 226 million years ago. It would have accumulated in a few days or less. And when they were drilling the Clem 7 tunnel, thank you Campbell Newman, the depth was discovered to be at least 50 metres below my feet here, and you can see how high, well you can't yet, I'll show you. You can see how high these cliffs are. So 50 metres down, and I'll show you a graphic of that as well in terms of the bedrock below Brisbane. Yeah, they had a devil of a time drilling these tunnels, believe you me. Where I'm standing, drilling said that it goes another 50 metres below my feet here in Fortitude Valley, just across the Story Bridge, 80 metres. Far out. As it travelled south, so they've now worked out, and you'll see in the graphic, that they think that sort of judging by sort of what they can see in the rocks, that instead of coming from the south, it came from the north. So as it travelled south, the ash cloud waned a bit. So you wouldn't get as much down at Redland Bay as you would here or at Narangba. Further north, when they were drilling for the Airport Link Tunnel, wonderful road, screw getting stuck in traffic on Kingsford Smith Drive on your way to the airport, hop in the tunnel, pay your $5 and you're there ready for your flight in no time. So when they were drilling for that tunnel, they discovered 4 separate ash flow deposits with differently coloured ignimbrites, your fiery shower, separated by muddy sediments. So there you go. So here's another graphic of the distribution of the Brisbane Tuff in the city area. Have a look at that, and I'll turn the page. The jury is still out on the source vent, but flow structures in the rock indicated it flowed north to south, so not from southeast as described by earlier research, at least north of Narangba, and possibly as far north as Woodford and Mount Byron, west of Caboolture, where they have the folk festival every year, because there were other volcanic rocks that were erupted around about the same time. In the Brisbane area, this pyroclastic flow travelled down old valleys, and even today the outcrop pattern shows you where these valleys were 220 million years ago. So again, they mention these tree trunks. I'll have to have a look out for them. So the original terrain seems to have been quite mountainous, not surprising given the subduction story and all the compression of the crust that was happening and the uplift of deep ocean sediments. Because I don't quite get this, but the book says that it seems to have been quite hilly area, quite mountainous, because the Enoggera granite, Mount Cootha, remember, which is an intrusion, which would have been up to 3 kilometres below the ancient mountains. Oh, I think I do get it now. Oh, okay. Now, even after erosion, So you've got 3 kilometres of erosion to get to the top of Mount Cootha, and Mount Cootha is 287 metres above sea level. Now, Mount Cootha, even after erosion, is still at a higher elevation than the Tuff. So, yeah, it must have been pretty mountainous around here. Comparisons can be made to the pyroclastic flow of Mount St Helens in 1980, but we are talking a much huger scale here. Maybe the 1912 eruption at Katmai in Alaska, but that's still pretty small bickies when it is compared to the Brisbane Tuff. So let's take a look at this. This is Brisbane Tuff. Yeah, look at that. All right. And I think you can see a couple of climbers. These cliffs are very popular with the climbers. Look, we're still not at the top yet. Oh, wow. Look at this. These cliffs are huge. There we are, finally got to the top. Look at that. All right, you've got a couple of climbers coming down. This area is very popular with climbers. So, here is the Welded Tuff. So, you got cream coloured rocks, pink, mauve or green. You might be able to see crystals of clear quartz and white feldspar. See if we can see some pumice, maybe angular pieces of the bedrock, bunya phyllite and greenstone. So I'm going to swing you around because this tuff goes all the way to the river, and in fact into the river. And we're going to take a little walk. I'm going to swing you around. So there you go. This tuff goes right into the river. We're right on through there. The jogger going past. Brisbane, we call Brisbane the River City for bleeding obvious reasons, obviously, because the river's the main attraction. So what you're looking at, we're going to take a closer look at this outcrop. But actually you can see the mangroves across the river. That big building there, number 1 William Street, I described to you as Campbell Newman's penis. And he never got to see it built because he was a wildly unpopular premier, and we gave him the boot after 1 term. So we're right on the river here. Look at that. So we call this. So what you can see across the river is mangroves and the old botanical gardens. So that's the CBD. Oh, sorry, folks. That's the CBD. You swing round to Eagle Street Pier and some more mangroves. Well, I think we'll take a walk along the river. You'll enjoy that. And then more of the cliffs. There's a little walkway up there, and I'm going to take a little hike up there. All right, so I'm going to pack up the tripod, and we're going to take a little walk and have a look at ourselves. Look at that. Look at that. Huge. We do not muck around in Brisbane when it comes to volcanic eruptions, and in fact, yeah, Australia is known as the land of the big thing, the big banana, the big pineapple, the big prawn, you name it. So I'll take another swing round. This is a very popular bike track. Oh, hang on. City. No, that's a ferry going past. They're not interesting. I want to show you a city cat. All right. So there you go. Look at that. Brisbane Tuff. And that's only the top bit of it. There's another 50 metres below that. All right, packing up the tripod. And we're going to go for a little walk. Oh, hang on. City cat coming past. All right, hang on. So that is a city cat. So we've got a lot of ferries across the river. These are catamarans, and they go up and down the river from St Lucia to Hamilton. Very, very popular mode of transport and tourist attraction. Actually, they were so popular when they first came out that people would ride on them all day, up and down the river all day. And the council had to put a stop to that because, well, a bit greedy, don't you think? And they said, look, because I think the trip's about 2 hours. You know, you get on at St Lucia. You know, you get off at St Lucia. You don't go to St Lucia, go down to Hamilton, go back to St Lucia, and stay on the ferry. Because other people got to use it. So, right. And isn't it a beautiful day here in Brisbane, Queensland? Beautiful winter's day. This is winter, folks. Probably 22, 23 degrees. And as you see, I've got my hat and sunnies on, being sun smart, because even in winter, the sun will fry you to a crisp in 10 minutes. All right, packing up the tripod. Let's go for a walk. I'm going to the river. And so you can see the Brisbane Tuff extends into the river, and as you can see, it's a pretty brown and dirty river, the Brisbane River, and I'll comment on that a bit later. So what we're looking at, we've got some cream coloured rocks, pink, mauve, green, and I'm going to go a bit closer, and we might be able to see some crystals of clear quartz and white feldspar. So I'll give you a little bit more of a look. So there's the CBD. That big tower there is actually a residential tower for the students. That's your Brisbane CBD. I don't know if I zoom in a bit. You'll get a better view of this. So you'll get a better view of this when I go up the top of the cliffs. But that little white, those little white things close to the river, that's Eagle Street Pier. Quite a few restaurants and that there. When you swing round, you're looking towards the valley. We can't see the Story Bridge yet. There's another outcrop of Brisbane Tuff. A few mangroves there for you. And then swing around, don't get sick, but you can see your Brisbane Tuff, Kangaroo Point cliffs. And there's been a bit of erosion take place, but they pretty much estimate that that's the top of the flow.
It's okay to say that.
There you go. All right, walkies. Now let's get a little bit up close and personal with this stuff.
With the
Hang on, zoom back out again. There we go. All right. All right. So let's get up and close and personal. Look at that. Hey. Now this is interesting. Look at those little veins through the rock. And you can see sort of different colours. This is probably a lot of weathering, of course. I mean, this is 226 million year old. So yeah, a lot of weathering taking place. All right. So over the river, that's the old Botanic Gardens. A bit of a dock happening there. So let's go walkies. And I'll be able to show you what we're coming up to. I'll be able to give you a good view of this in a second. Here's, alright. So we're now looking towards South Bank and South Brisbane. There are a lot of those hotels, but they're also residential blocks as well. And the bridge that you're looking at is the Captain Cook Bridge, part of the Southeast Freeway. There's also a dry dock past it. Oh look, we've got another city cat coming too. They're a real icon in Brisbane. You see that city cat there? Hang on. There you go. Look at that, city cat. So that's the Captain Cook Bridge, built in the late 1960s, 69. Forms part of the Riverside Expressway. Victoria Bridge was built at that time. So this here is Gardens Point. And what's interesting is that that particular bit used to extend a bit further out in the river. But I think during the floods and the cyclone, there was so much water coming through that it ripped the tip of that off, and you can still see some of it at low tide, but we're at high tide at the moment. So there's your there we go, look at that. Alright, there's your city cat. He's going to stop around soon, I think. So they swing really wide here. Hang on, lost him again. There you go, there's your city cat. Now these high rises are fairly recent. There's been a lot of development in recent years. Hang on, another city cat coming. Look at that, hey? Look at that. So, very popular with the tourists and the locals alike. There you go. Alright, so let's get up and close and personal with this rock. And as I walk along, can I say that what a dickens of a time this Brisbane Tuff gave the tunnel borers. So Campbell Newman decided to copy Sydney in regards to tunnel building for the roads beneath the river, because they did it. So this is some of the Brisbane Tuff that lines the walls of the Brisbane River. See that? So so Campbell Newman thought that road tunnels below the river would be excellent, because it's a dickens of a time having to get approval for bridges. Problem is that the Sydney bedrock is of a much softer sandstone, and I've just discovered this, but Sydney Harbour is actually just a drowned river valley. So, whereas here, in order to bore through the Brisbane Tuff, they needed a special borer. Really blew out the budget. So, to be able to cut through this really tough rock, they needed a special borer. So a lot of buildings are made of this quarried tuff. I'm going to show you that in the next video. The Anglican and Catholic cathedrals. I'm going to take a hike up these cliffs. You can see there's a little staircase up there. I'll take a hike up these cliffs. There's a bit of a breeze coming down the river. And I'm going to introduce you to St Mary's Anglican Church, Kangaroo Point. It's a really pretty church. Gorgeous inside and a lovely concert venues. Hopefully when live concerts start up again. I've done a number of concerts. There's your climbers again. Done a number of concerts inside that church. While you're up there, I'll show you the view, point out a few landmarks, and give you a brief history. I think I'm capturing the sun glittering off the water, so you can also see the walls along the river. They're not natural, man-made. You can see it across the river as well. You can see the walls. You've got your mangroves, no walls there. But I'll give you, I'll show you the view, which is spectacular. Point out a few landmarks and give you a history of the Brisbane River, both geologically and historically. See you in a bit. Right, folks, I thought I would show you getting up and close and personal with the mangroves. So, a bit of rubbish as well. Let's walk right down the river, shall we? Because we can. We'll get up and close and personal with the mangroves. So, these are an important breeding ground for fish, young fish, little baby fishies. So very muddy. You got those little sort of feeler thingies coming out of the mud as well. Unfortunately, the locals try to get rid of these things because they ruin their view, and also because they're breeding grounds for mosquitoes. So these line the banks of the river and of creeks and of the foreshore along the bay. A very famous tree in Brisbane, apart from the mangrove, is the Morton Bay Fig. And they can get pretty old. Let's keep walking. Oh, and she does a dad noise because and let's get close and personal. Look at that. Hey, look at that. Hey, let's get a little bit more close, up and personal with the tuff. Oh, why don't we take a nice little walk through the mangroves? A little bit of a boardwalk here. The naval stores also used to be along the Kangaroo Point cliffs in the early 20th century. Oh, they've even got a light there, look at that. This might be quite nice at night. So, oh man, can you smell the salt water? The salt, the tides get up as far as Chelmer. And you can see a bit more of your Brisbane tuff. Look at that. Alright. So you got mud on top of your tuff. And so we're sort of out of the mangroves here into the local flora. And so we come to another lookout. And you get a good view of Sea Bus Super building. It's a nice little walk. And you get more of an idea of the CBD. And you see those rock walls? They're Brisbane tuff. So across the water, the old botanical gardens. Of course, the new botanical gardens are at Mount Cootha. And there's a bit of sprinkling happening, but I want to get up to the top of the Kangaroo Point Cliffs and show you. There's another shot for Captain Cook. You can see a bit of Somerville House from here. Alright, come back to you. And actually, next to the Seabus Super building in the middle there, just to your left, that's a bit of new Parliament House. There's an old Parliament House, which they still sit in, but that's a bit of new Parliament House right next door, and that's where the pollies stay overnight if they can't get back to their electorates. Alright. Be back in a sec. Alright, so we're getting up close and personal with the tuff. So, I don't know what I'm looking at. So these cliffs aren't natural, but you can see there's different colours. There's a few sort of lichens and stuff. Probably a few iron impurities happening as well. There's a bit of local flora poking out. It's a particularly interesting bit, I think. So, I don't know what I'm looking at. Any geologist worth their salt could point this out. So, here you go. Look at that. Excuse the wind noise. Alright, I'm going to take you up on the hike. I don't have a fancy gizmo like Nicholas, so it's going to be a bit choppy. So there you go. This is quite impressive, isn't it? Perhaps all over Mount St Helens. Sorry to say, folks, but we don't muck around here in Australia. There's a sort of a new cut rock. There you go. Oh, look at that. Have another look at these. No. This is 226 million year old rock. So the cliffs aren't as high. So I thought I might be puffing and huffing a bit more than I will be. Actually, I probably will. Might need a bit of a rest and then I'll come back to you. Alright. There you go. Look at that. Hey? So obviously I don't think these steps made of tuff look like they do. So obviously some of it's made of tuff. Got some people coming down the cliffs.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Well, I'll give you another view. Look at that, so as we get a bit higher, nice view there. I'll get you out of shot. How's that? Alright, let's keep going. It's a nice little rest for me. Not terribly fit. I don't do hikes. I don't do walks. Furthest I walk is to the mailbox and to put the bin out. Oh, we're getting some good view here. There you go. Out you go, mate. There's some light coloured rock. Alright, let's keep going. Oh, starting to get a good view now. Look at that. Alright, I'll let you go, mate. So that's a modern day intrusion in the rock. A little bit of cement, because there's some sort of line going up there. Alright, starting to get a good view now. Luckily we got the river tied in. Hang on. Another city cat coming through. Look at that. Advertising the Firebirds. which is a female sports team here in Brisbane. Another one coming through as well. Alright, some more light coloured rock for you. There we go, up the... I'll keep you on the view actually. Oh, a bit more for you. Gotta come down this later. That'll be a nice relief. Yeah. There you go. There you go, there's some more interesting stuff for you. Hey? Alright, onwards and upwards. So I'm not a hiking person. I used to be incredibly fit. Used to ride my bike, rollerblade for up to 3 hours at a time. Oh, it's a bit windy. Plane going over. I got to concentrate. Alright, far out. Oh, this is a bit of a walk. Gee, I don't know if I'll make it over the Story Bridge, but I think I'm almost at the top. Oh yeah, alright. And I'll switch you to the main camera and block out the traffic noise. Okay, here we go. This is the view from the top. Look at that, eh? You got your Captain Cook, Gardens Point. If I zoom in a bit more, you'll see QUT. That's one of the local universities around here. It used to be called the Queensland Institute of Technology. Now the Queensland University of Technology. Real world leader in research. Actually, the Queensland Conservatorium used to be in the Gardens Point campus of the Queensland University of Technology, and then we moved to South Bank in '96. Sorry, there we go. And if you look just behind that parliamentary building, you'll see a little wheel. Brisbane wheel, nothing special. So there's a few, there's hotels and high rises. Hang on, see the Marriott. And actually, see the mountains there, part of the Taylor Range. Can you see the TV towers? There's Mount Cootha. Fabulous, huh? Alright. So, and you see where the Brisbane River, even around here, in the middle of the city, is pretty impressive. Although pretty brown and dirty. So, yeah. And if you go further east, you'll come to the Gabba motorbike. Alright, come back to you in a sec. Okay folks, hang on. I couldn't get to St Mary's the way I wanted to. I had to go down a bunch of stairs. But I'm walking along Main Street now, which is the approach to St Mary's Anglican Church, Kangaroo Point. And as you can see, there's more Brisbane Tuff. So this is not the quarried bit. This was, so this was not the quarried bit. This is a road cutting. So, Main Street, say that. There you go. So you can see Brisbane Tuff across the road as well. There you go. I apologise for the traffic. This is the main road. Apologise for my shoddy. Now I don't know how recent that is, but the Aborigines here like to do this sort of thing. Basically put their hand up against the rock and spit ochre from their mouths and get a handprint. So I don't think this is recent. I don't think this is ancient. But you can find these things that's not a dike, that's man-made. Alright? It gives you an idea of the rocks. Look at that. Hey? I've decided I don't have enough energy to hike over Story Bridge. I'll have to do that another day. So this is the entrance to St Mary's. They've got quite a few residential towers around here, suburb of Kangaroo Point. So let's keep there's a bit of a local flora. So folks, hang on, I'll see if I can come back to me. Can I come back to me? No, I can't. Alright. I don't know why I can't flip around, but anyway. So, this is more Tuff. Hey, look at that. So we're walking up to the top of the Tuff now, and they think this was the top of the flow, the pyroclastic flow. Look at that. Hey, we'll zoom in on that. So can you see? Oh, okay. Look at that. It just came off in my hands. That shouldn't happen. But, maybe that's a little bit of cement. Is that a bit of pumice? Is that another bit? Hey? So this is wall made of your tuff. That there is, hang on, that there is St Vincent's Hospital, private hospital. My dad stayed there quite a bit last year and early this year. Alright, that is St Mary's Anglican Church, made out of Brisbane Tuff. That's the church hall. That's also quite historic. Let's keep going. They actually renamed this hospital. They renamed it from Mount Olivet because basically if you went into Mount Olivet, you didn't come out. So they named it St Vincent's. And my dad managed to come out of it, which was good. He was in there quite a while. Alright, so this is the rectory. Very typical Queenslander. You got your veranda out the front. And being a historic building, we even had corrugated iron roof and a chimney. So early Queensland houses had fireplaces. Although pretty redundant really. So here's your church made out of Kangaroo Point Tuff. I'm on my iPhone at the moment. I'm going to swing round. There's the bell tower. I'll tell you about that. Separate to the church. So there's your rectory. Verandas around three sides. I wouldn't be surprised if those bricks weren't tough as well. So the beautiful stained glass windows as well. There's an old attempt at a bell tower that didn't quite happen. Alright, so that looks like the foundation stone. Tell you when that was laid. And I'll take you around to the front. So, beautiful. I'll give you a look again at the chimneys, the corrugated iron roof. Very, very Queensland. And this is the front of the church. So, stained glass window. Attempt at a bell tower. Didn't quite happen. Alright, so I shall set up the camera in a nice shady spot. And we'll talk about this lovely church. See you in a sec. I've walked up the staircase cut into the cliffs. This is St Mary's Anglican Church, often called St Mary's on the Cliffs. It's heritage listed. So thankfully knocked down by the Dean brothers in the 70s and 80s. So it was designed by Richard George Souter and was built in 1873 by Alfred Grant. Now this replaces an earlier timber structure from 1849, which was actually built on land closer to the river. And in fact this is only one of two surviving stone churches designed by Souter. So in 1892 a cyclone caused considerable damage to the roof. Now inside, and I can't show you because it looks like it's shut, the pipe organ, and I have a particular interest in pipe organs because my best friend is a pipe organist, and I've been listening to pipe organs since a child when I went to church. I don't do that anymore, but sometimes I sneak into church services just to hear my buddy play. Alright, so I know the organist, Philip Gearing, have performed with him on a number of occasions. Lovely, lovely bloke, and a brilliant organist. So the organ, and sorry this is not geological, but I'm a musician so you're going to have to put up with it. The organ was built by H.C. Lincoln. It was imported from a London church in 1876. So I'll swing round and show you the rectory. Hang on. So, excuse the angle. I'm on a bit of a slope. All right. So the rectory was completed in 1889, designed by John Higston Buckeridge. So it has verandas on three sides. Very Queenslander fashion, where the old houses were built in a style designed to catch the slightest breath of wind in summer to alleviate the heat. Bit cold in winter, but then Brisbane winters don't get that cold compared to North America. So I showed you before the bell tower. It's separate to the church, and that was built to honour the memory of a former rector and World War I Army chaplain, the Reverend William Maitland Woods. I wonder if he's a relation of mine. I'm related to quite a lot of Woods. So, as I said, this church is built out of Brisbane tuff, quarried from down below. Alright, now I'm not going to talk much more about Brisbane tuff. Hang on, I'll just get out in front of the camera for you. Alright, I'm not going to talk any more about the Brisbane tuff. I'm not going to take you across the Story Bridge, because quite frankly I'm a bit puffed. I'm going to leave it there. I'm a little bit stuffed. Here's a graphic of what this bit under the Story Bridge looks like. So you can see the Naranli, you can see the sort of the original bedrock, and then you can see the ash, the tuff. Sorry, not the tuff, the ash flow, and then you can see the tuff, and there's a bit of fossilised tree in there. So there you go. Now, I'm too stuffed to hike over there and see it for yourself. See it for myself. All right, that's probably enough from me. So, this is Kathy Williams-Devries, Chief Aussie Zent Nerd. So, I don't know if you can see that, but t-shirts available on my website. There's quite a range, personally designed by myself. I don't know if you noticed, but I've had a sneaky strip because it's a bit warm here. So I'm coming to you from Brisbane, capital of Queensland, Australia. Very beautiful part of the world. One of the most livable cities in the world. Now, my next video, I'm going to have a hike through the central business district across the river, and I'm going to introduce you to the building stones of Brisbane. So quarried around here, very, very interesting. So you got your Brisbane tuff, you got various sandstones. Really, really captivating stuff. And I'm going to show you those convict buildings too while we're at it, and also a nice view. So coming to you from Brisbane, Australia, I'm going to bring you a song because I'm a musician. So I've been around the world a couple of times, or maybe more. I've seen the sights, I've had delights of every foreign shore. But when my friends all ask me the place that I adore, I tell them right away. What's Brisbane? But anyway, I'll go on. Give me a home amongst the gum trees with lots of plum trees. A sheep or two and a kangaroo, a clothesline out the back, veranda out the front, and an old rocking chair. So there you go. So glad you've joined me at whatever point. So I'm going to broadcast this live on Facebook in the Zent Nerd group, and premiere it on YouTube as well. Join me for either. I'll send you the links. But you're already here, so you already know the links. So glad to present this to you. So next Tuesday, it'll be my Monday that I do the recording, and my Wednesday when I broadcast it. I'm going to take you into the central business district, and we're going to look at the rocks of the buildings there. Bloody ripper. Hooroo from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Bye for now.